This is why I wrote the book Question Things. Certainty is an absurdity. I worked as a CA specialist for 8 years, and it was my job to be an expert in human behavior and be taught by experts in human behavior. And I couldn't help but notice that psychologists were bad at predicting relevant specific behaviors, key emphasis on relevant. But they were great at labeling people, which is kind of a trick, calling out what you've already observed and being accurate about it and adding truisms. It's what psychics do, by the way, and it makes them seem really impressive to the untrained eye. For example, they can observe someone and say they have this condition. They probably come from this background. They probably don't make eye contact, and people go, "Oh, wow, that's impressive." But it's all the past. However, you could say, here are some videos of our kidnapper. A kidnapper says, "I want $200,000 or your friend dies. Please label this kidnapper." The expert would label them and you would say, "Okay, now tell us what this means they will do and what we should do." And at best, these experts were correct 70% of the time, but it was really something more like 50-50. Essentially a coin toss. So the Myers-Briggs and other systems for labeling personality types are great at labeling what happened, but they're very bad at predicting what will happen. In other words, in my experience, never use flawed systems like the Myers-Briggs to make assumptions. Assumptions are very often wrong. Now, experience and statistics are different. This does not mean that there's no sense in studying, because there's such great information out there and make a case for why you need to study in my book. And experience is great too. In the example that we used with the kidnapper, an experienced negotiator might know that usually people from this area who take people from that area are just trying to get a few extra bucks to party with on Friday. The experienced kidnapper will say, offer them $237 and say it's all the money you have. And sure enough, you do that and it works. They'll take the $237 and split. Another observation is that I would learn something and then read 5 years later that it wasn't true. Anyone who's studied sports nutrition long enough knows this to be the case. Here's a researcher I recently listened to making the same point. I saved it because, just like Robert Kiyosaki's definition of intelligence, if you agree with me, you're intelligent. So I found her to be very intelligent.
My belief system is a made-up story. This is really an important idea. I thought that everything written in a book is true. As soon as the publications come out, as soon as I can go to PubMed, I thought those things written down were true. Absolutes. And then you stay in medicine for 30 years and you realize the things that you were taught are not truth anymore. Well, that means they made up those stories. They do a scientific experiment. You and I are looking at the data, but there's always a conclusory. My conclusions from this data are. Those are always made up stories. They made up those stories. That was their